Welcome to the Viking Age podcast. This is let's restart right there. I got a little tripped up there. Got too many things on my desktop, but let's try it again. Live YouTube right here. Welcome to the Viking Age podcast, the official podcast of the vikingage.com. We do this every Monday and Thursday night, 6:15 p.m. Central Time, right here on the Viking Age YouTube channel. If you miss it, we got you covered in podcast form the next day on Apple and Spotify. But however you listen, make sure you're liking, subscribing, giving us a good review because we never want you to miss a new episode. My name is Chris Schad. I'm a contributor at the Viking Age as well as zone coverage and Bring Me the News. Once again, my co-host Adam Patrick has decided to slack and take the day off, but don't worry, I got you covered because we brought in a special guest for the day. His name is Trevor Squire. He writes for the Vikings at heavy.com. It's Heavy on Vikings is the name of the website. Welcome to the show, Trevor.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chris.
So let's get to know you pretty quick because I just want to know, for starters, how did you get into this sad, twisted reality of becoming a Vikings fan?
Well, I mean, I don't think many people choose that. You're obviously born into it as a Minnesotan.
Yeah.
So yeah, I was born and raised like an hour north of the Twin Cities. Obviously Moss era was kind of like right around the time I started getting interested into football. I was thinking back to just like how my Minnesota sports fandom and the heartbreak started with the Wild winning 2 game sevens and then dropping four straight games to the Anaheim Ducks Western Conference Finals. Next year Timberwolves suffer the same fate, and at that point you're just kind of hooked. And since then I've kind of followed the team slowly but surely. And then I think leading up to like the Brett Favre era, that's what really just kind of where everything stuck for me. And, since then it's kind of just been a little bit of an obsession, I'd say.
It is funny you say that because I was on Mackie and Judd for Write That Down yesterday, and they asked me, they're like, so when did you become a Minnesota sports fan? I'm like, well, my mom was stuck to a hospital bed in 1986 on a snowy day and forced to watch Jack Nicklaus win the Masters. She doesn't like golf. That's the funny part about all of that. But yeah, I mean, basically you're born into it. Go to games, you watch all the teams. I guess I'll ask this too. What is your favorite Vikings moment so far as a fan?
I mean, it's got to be the miracle. Like that
Yeah.
was I mean, nothing, words can't describe it. Like that's just one of those points where like everything in your head just kind of like turns off and you're just reacting. Like I'm a very like measured person watching sports, being a reporter. I covered high school sports for over a decade. So, I'm out at games, can't really be showing a lot of partisanship like that. And I'm just there to watch sports. I want to see good plays happen. And then when something like that happened, like that part of my brain completely turned off. And I was just like screaming and shouting with friends. It's very rare to get that kind of reaction out of me. So I'd say that's be my top Minnesota sports moment for sure.
See, I was at that game too, and we've had our rewatchables, obviously, where we went through and talked about some old games. Me delivering a Roman Reigns spear to my friend at US Bank Stadium was probably the highlight of the play. But a ton of good moments. I mean, you obviously have, everything that happened until Gary Anderson missed in 1998, the Brett Favre touchdown pass, all of those good things. And hopefully the Vikings have a couple of good ones coming into this season, but I don't think they'll be happening at center because some news broke today that JC Tretter not only is retiring, but he revealed that he wanted to play for the Vikings. So fans obviously have begged for the Vikings to sign Tretter this offseason as a replacement for Garry Bradley. They said maybe it was his knees, maybe it was his position as the NFLPA players rep. But according to the Sports Illustrated report, JC Tretter called the Vikings, and the Vikings never called back. He wanted to play with the Panthers. He wanted to play with the Cowboys. He wanted to play the Vikings because he cheered for them as a kid. Minnesota never returned the call, so I'll start here. What do you make of JC Tretter calling the Vikings and essentially getting ghosted?
I mean, it's been the story the whole offseason. The new regime obviously was banking on Bradbury, and 3 weeks into training camp, they came to the same conclusion a lot of fans have. So, for the longest time, it's just been like, why hasn't Tretter been signed? Why hasn't Tretter been signed? And obviously the Sports Illustrated article, because we had reports that he was interested, that the short list quote, I think Phil Mackey had that scoop a while back this summer. And after this Sports Illustrated article, I think it just kind of came to surface that as much as the interest was out there, it just wasn't reciprocated on, many teams' end, including the Vikings.
Yeah, he was the second highest rated blocker according to Pro Football Focus last year. So it's not like he was washed on the field. But I read this report and I kind of thought about the other teams that are involved, the Panthers and the Cowboys. And from most accounts, it sounded like nobody called him. Nobody brought him in for a physical. Nobody did any of that stuff. So, I mean, I don't know if the PA thing had to do with it, or maybe it was his knees. Maybe people were just a little bit leery about that. But I think that, this was a league wide decision. And I think what Vikings fans should be angry about is not that the Vikings didn't call back JC Tretter. They didn't provide any competition for Garry Bradley. In the third round, they had a chance to pick from a ton of centers, a ton of interior linemen, and they decided on Brian Asamoah, who's basically a luxury linebacker pick. Do you think the Vikings should have saw this coming and brought in more competition for Garry Bradley?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just kind of with the budget veteran signings that they make every year. And, nothing against Chris Reed, nothing against Jesse Davis, but these interior linemen who have some center experience, like I would just like to see them make a move with someone who is like a center through and through. And they didn't do it in free agency. They didn't do it in the draft. Um, you know, I've literally came to the idea of like, why not just throw Wyatt Davis out there at center, see what happens? Like, just we need something to happen at this point, and like that's how dire it seems at center.
It's almost like they shifted everything over to center that we were fearing about right guard. Because honestly, it's so weird. I feel comfortable at right guard right now. Like with Ed Ingram in there, I like what I've seen. He needs a little bit of work. I mean, Javon Kinlaw bullied him for a sack last week, but he's a rookie. That stuff's going to happen to rookies. My biggest concern is Garrett Bradbury getting blown away by the wind, or Kenny Clark getting hauled out of US Bank Stadium because he just murdered him in week one. I mean, the first 2 weeks alone are just a gauntlet because you got to go against Kenny Clark in week one. Kevin O'Connell mentioned it himself. Like, teams are going to look to target him, and that's why he gets so many one-on-one matchups. So you might see a guy like Rashawn Gary going after Garrett Bradbury, much like the Vikings are going to do with Danielle Hunter and Zadarius Smith. And if Garrett Bradbury survives that game, he's got to go to Philadelphia and he's got to take on Jordan Davis, who is just eater of worlds for the Eagles so far during camp. So, I mean, with a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, who does not move from his spot, like he is Ron Burgundy of the NFL. It's like I will say what is in the teleprompter. Like, you need to have everything correct. And I kind of see what Kevin O'Connell said at the combine, that he's really athletic. He's great in the run game. He can do all of these things. But at the same time, you just have to know, like, sometimes, what you think has to be mired with results on the field. And Garrett Bradbury has been one of the worst centers in the league, according to Pro Football Focus.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a tough spot because when we look at the PFF metrics and things like, I mean, and you don't need the metrics to see that he's getting run over in pass protection. But on the other end, he's a good run blocker. It seems like we're still going to be committing to a wide zone running scheme. Dalvin Cook is like going to be a feature in this offense. And on top of that, there's the intangibles of Bradbury being like a good communicator with the line and having the most experience in chemistry. So, I just, no matter how this training camp turned out, which is, it's sounding like one of his worst training camps of his career, I'm just wondering how committed they were to the beginning with him, and just they're biting the bullet this year. And maybe they're thinking about a 2-year plan with Kirk as well.
Well, I mean, if the Bradbury thing goes south, at least they'll get use out of their brand new punter, right? That'll get Viking fans excited. I am a little bit disappointed, though. Are you a little bit sad that we're not getting a punt off during Saturday's game?
It may have been one of the only reasons I've been tuning in this far into the off season, and us kind of knowing all the things that are certain so far with the roster makeup. It was kind of the last question mark left there.
I
So yeah, no punt off. Ticket prices are just tanking right now. Like it's gonna be an empty stadium. I'm sure a lot of fans feel the same way.
just bring your like relative that doesn't like football very much. Like, hey, you ever want to go to a Vikings game? Okay, well, who's playing? And don't worry about it.
Yeah.
I think it was hilarious that Chris Thomason coined it as a punt off, and Matt Daniels like, yeah, sure, punt off, yeah, whatever, man. Like,
It sounds like a London game. I
oh
mean,
yeah,
like I would love if people actually embraced it, like fully just screaming and cheering every kick, every opportunity there is a kick. Like
don't put
it
any
would be fun.
don't put anybody else on the field. Just have the two punters, one like high noon, but like one's at 120-yard line and one's at the other. Anyway, let's talk about the new punter because the Vikings cut Jordan Berry on Thursday, wiping out all of our dreams for a punt off. Berry had a career high 46.5 yards per punt last season. His net was 41.9, though. That was 14th among all punters last season and 11th among punters with at least 35 punts. That's what Tommy Townsend had for the Kansas City Chiefs. He led the NFL in net yardage last season. But Wright's got a leg too. He had a career average of 44.5 yards per punt during his career at Tulane, had 47.5 yards per punt during his senior season last year. Of all the positions where I thought there was going to be a major change, punter was very low on my list. Were you surprised they made this move?
Yeah, I mean, frankly, it's just not a position where I feel like you want to bank on a developmental guy. It just seems like if you have consistency, that's not a liability. Like why fix something that's not broken? And so yeah, I was very, especially before the game. I thought maybe we'd actually see the punt off, and then a decision be made whether we go with Wright or Barry, he's like a proven NFL veteran. I think he's tied for first in most punts inside the 20 for the Steelers. Now
Mm-hmm.
that was mostly because of how long he had played there. He's like 9 years, 8 or 9 years in Pittsburgh. So it's like that's just consistency that if it were my team, I would kind of feel like why change it? But obviously they see something in Wright, and I can't begin to tell you the nuances of punting. But I do trust the new special teams coordinator quite a bit.
I really like Matt Daniels, just watching him at the podium, the
Mhm.
way he commands a room, the way he kind of talks and empowers his player. He's empowering kickers. He's talking about Greg Joseph, and he's like, this man's sitting on the best year of his career. And like all Vikings fans are like, yeah, yeah, sure. We'll see what happens in like January. But I mean, the way that he's kind of instilled like special teams matter on this team, because I don't think Mike Zimmer did that. I think it was all about the defense. And if you were on offense, if you were on special teams, you didn't matter in the grand scheme of things. I like what they're doing. The whole young punter thing kind of scares me for two reasons. One, it's kind of funny when you think about it, because Kwesi's talking about competitive rebuild, and he was like, where's the rebuild? Well, we got a young punter. We got a rookie. Come on, we're building for the future here, guys. Let's go. We got 47-year-old Adam Thielen on our roster, but I mean, outside of that, but I'm a little bit concerned about the holding position on field goals, because Greg Joseph was having a tremendous camp. He was pretty damn good last season, all things considered. Everybody just wants to talk about the miss against the Cardinals, but the way they kind of have played musical chairs with those three positions over the past couple of years, I was excited to have some continuity there. And now you mess with one thing there. Like, is that a concern for you, or do you think that's kind of overblown?
It's a concern for me personally, but then when Daniel says, "Oh, I asked Greg Joseph how are these guys holding," and he showed no preference for it, like I trust Daniels in this situation, but I think that's kind of how we saw the demise of Dan Bailey a little bit.
Yeah.
They made some midseason cuts for his holder, and suddenly there's just all these changes abound. He gets a case of the yips and never recovers, and we end up cutting weight with Dan Bailey, who's like one of the most consistent field goal kickers like past like 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And hopefully, hopefully you won't see the same thing happen with Greg Joseph. He seemed to have a very good offseason. So that's encouraging, especially after how he worked himself out of a little bit of a rut earlier last season.
If you want to look at how bad kickers were during the Mike Zimmer era, take into consideration Dan Bailey was one of the most accurate kickers of all time when he came to Minnesota. I think he was a high 80s kicker, only made 75% of his kicks. And that Tampa Bay game in 2020 is just going to be burned into my brain for all eternity. And I mean, part of it, yeah, it was the personnel, but it was also Mike Zimmer kind of metaphorically standing on the sidelines with a shotgun every time somebody missed. Like Daniel Carlson, who we might talk about here in a little bit, like that's just kind of how it was. It was just, if you don't make this kick, we'll bring in 6 punters or 6 kickers to try and replace you. And I think the fact that they're going with this young punter because they do see something with him, I think it's encouraging, and I think it's another step forward for the special teams unit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think the biggest thing with like the regime change is they're just trying to, you know, bring a little bit of breath of fresh air there. Barry's been around as long as Joseph, so there, as much as we want continuity, there's nothing that's been super entrenched. And I mean, Wright seems to have a cannon for a leg, and that may benefit in the long term, especially with this team that's not planning to punt. But if they do find themselves in those situations where they're not comfortable going for it on fourth, then they'll have someone who can just flip the field for them.
I got to ask the important question about the punter before we move on. Are you upset that he's wearing 66?
I love it. I wish it could stick. He has to change his number if he's going to make the 53-man roster. I feel like an equipment manager, like rookie mini camps, equipment manager just like looked at him. They're like, oh, he's a pulling guard or something. Just throws a 66 jersey on him, and he's just been stuck with it ever since. But maybe that's some incentive for him to play well on Sunday. And I'm not sure what his favorite number was in college, but he'll have to change to a single digit or 1 through 19, right?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if the whole number thing exists anymore, because like anybody can wear any number they want. I mean, Dalvin Cook's wearing 4,
Mm-hmm.
Patrick Peterson's wearing 7. So I don't know if that's still a thing. It reminds me of Randy Moss when he got to New England, and they were talking about how, 81 was taken, or I think 84 was taken and 18 was taken. So they're like, well, what number do you want? And Randy Moss told the equipment manager, just give me a number. I'll make the damn number. So he's running around there with the number 6 in minicamp. Eventually he switched to number 81 with the Patriots, but it's just kind of the funny things you see. I saw 66 on Saturday, and I was just like, what is trick play? What's happening here? They're pulling a guard from Punter. This is amazing. But anyway, speaking of nondescript players, Kevin O'Connell says there is a competition at backup quarterback, even though they just traded for a backup quarterback. Of course, the Vikings traded for Nick Mullens on Monday. Kellen Mond and Sean Mannion have done Kellen Mond and Sean Mannion things this preseason. So, I'm kind of bringing this up because Kevin O'Connell did say that we're just trying to add a good player to our roster. We're trying to be a better football team. There's no competition here, right?
No, there's zero. There's the idea that maybe Sunday is a tryout for Nick Mullens, and he already won his tryout. That was the Raiders Vikings preseason opener. He played well there. The Vikings liked what they saw, and they signed him. He doesn't have to prove anything, because if all goes well, knock on wood, he will never have to play. Kirk will play every game this season besides week 17, because the Vikes won't need to play in a meaningless game. Fingers crossed. But he doesn't need to be like brought up to speed or like show a mastery of the playbook at this juncture. He can sit back, breathe things in, continue to show what he can do in practice, which seems like that's what the Vikings have been doing all along with the starters.
Yeah, I think I'm not really sure if Mullens is even going to play, just because he doesn't know the playbook too much. It would probably be nice to get him some live reps, because you don't want him going in cold turkey if you do want him playing in week 17 or 18, or heaven forbid Kirk Cousins gets hurt. I mean, if you are fine with Kellen Mond and Sean Mannion, you don't trade for this guy. And I mean, He's a guy that has experience starting, and he's a guy that gives you a non-zero chance to win a football game. watching Kellen Mond and Sean Mannion average around 4 yards per attempt on Saturday, something needed to be done. And I mean, the move isn't like, oh my God, we got Nick Mullens, but it's something that makes me a little bit more comfortable with the position if Kirk goes down or he suffers a free injury, gets COVID, whatever that might be. So, I mean, even if he doesn't play, I'm not reading too much into it, but I think the real competition is probably between Kellen Mond and Sean Mannion for that third spot. If that's the case, who do you think is the odd man out there?
I mean, I think Mond. I think Sean Mannion is the odd man out. I think Mond is a little more in favor of the new regime. You know, Mannion is essentially a player coach out there, and I mean, I could see where they might release him and just hire him on as some sort of specialist on staff, and might be a little bit of like there's more to save on the salary cap as well with Sean Mannion. So I just think like, what is there to lose and gain? Sean Mannion has this intangible, like, study relationship with Kirk Cousins, where Mond is still our only future option at quarterback beyond 2024, being under contract through there. So, I think Mannion's the guy who has to get to stepping.
I think the first thing you have to look at is that this regime did not draft Kellen Mond. They didn't take him in the third round. It was just kind of a asset they had when they came to training camp. I don't want to call him an asset, but you know what I mean. They had this young quarterback that they said, hey, maybe we can get something. And you explore that avenue. You try and develop him, try and do things the way you know, because for all we know, he was basically locked in a broom closet for his entire rookie year and never saw the light of day until that series in Green Bay. I think that Mond has more upside. Like if you go down 5 years, maybe Kellen Mond's a better quarterback, but we haven't seen anything that suggests that he's ready to play in the NFL, that he'll eventually make that leap. And if I'm another team, I'm not going, yeah, let's stick him on the 53 because I don't think he's ready for it. I think if best, he's maybe a quarterback 3. I mean, Judd Zolgad, I know, had that take, but I would try and get Kellen Mond on your practice squad. And if somebody claims him, that's the way it goes. I'm not a big fan of Sean Mannion, but he's a guy that Kirk likes. Like you said, he brings the cookies and, milk to study sections or whatever it is. Maybe, a case of Coors Light, although I don't know. Kirk looks like kind of a weird craft beer kind of guy in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, I think Sean Mannion's going to win that third. I think some Vikings fans will kind of gripe at that, but I prefer Mannion as a third quarterback as opposed to a second. Because if you go to your third anyway, you're just screwed. There is no super third backup on any team in the NFL.
You're forgetting about Case Keenum. That was
You're right. You're right. I think Trevor knocked away his mic right there. Case Keenum, of course, the guy who threw the Minneapolis Miracle pass. Yeah, I mean, you had Sam Bradford, you had Teddy Bridgewater, and then Case Keenum comes in and saves the day. Are we working again? Just waiting. Okay, so Trevor seems to, why don't you try and go out and come back in, and then I'll get you back on the broadcast, and we'll go from there. I'll try and go solo here as we come in here. But our fourth topic today is going to be about Rick Spielman, talking about the one that got away. He was talking about cutting players on his Twitter account, his Instagram account, or TikTok, whatever he's on now. And he eventually got to the player that he regretted cutting the most. And no shocker here, that player was Daniel Carlson. The Vikings traded up for Carlson in 2018. He missed some preseason kicks, so Mike Zimmer lost his mind and went for 2 in a preseason game. Hey, Trevor, we got you back?
We're back.
All right. So we're just talking about Daniel Carlson right now, and I'm kind of just going over the backstory. People know Rick Spielman said he was his biggest mistake cut that he ever made while he was Vikings general manager. Traded up for Carlson in 2018, missed some preseason kicks, so Zimmer decided to go for 2 to send a message in true Mike Zimmer fashion. Then he missed 3 kicks, including 2 game winners in Green Bay, and they had seen enough. Well, Since the start of the 2019 season, Carlson has knocked down 88.7% of his field goal attempts, and he was tied for the league lead with 150 points last season. How much do you regret letting go of Daniel Carlson, Trevor?
I mean, he was great, and I don't want to put all the blame on Zimmer, but something may not have been working here, and who knows if he could have ever turned it around. I feel like this is just one of those situations where you basically just have to bite the bullet and watch someone go to another team and do well. I feel like we have been extremely cursed for a while, and Mike Zimmer obviously contributed to that. And I'm not sure if Carlson would have panned out, but maybe Spielman felt let me phrase this correctly. Maybe if Spielman had a different head coach, which he's talked about before, working with his quarterback in Kirk, maybe things would have worked out differently with Carlson. It seems like it's a one or the other situation there for him.
So before talking about, I have to be honest, because I wanted Carlson off the team in the moment. and I wonder, kind of reading all these things, I look back in kind of my memory and I wonder if this game had happened against, I don't know, the Cardinals. Let's say Daniel Carlson had the Green Bay game against the Cardinals. Are we even cutting him? Are we kind of just being like, hey, write it out? Like, I think that things were just amplified because it was against a division rival. It was a season where the Vikings had Super Bowl expectations and the fans wanted him out. Mike Zimmer wanted out. Rick Spielman might have been his only ally in the building going, Mike, he's a rookie. He's going to be fine. You just got to trust him. And Zimmer going, no, I want Dan Bailey.
Yeah. I mean, they made that trade mid-season.
Yeah, they signed Dan Bailey, right? So it was week 3. They cut Carlson, so Carlson melted down in week 2. And the next day they cut him once they got off the plane, basically. And I think it was Chris Thomason asked him, he's like, so why'd you cut Daniel Carlson? And he's like, you saw the game. Mm-hmm. And he goes, was it hard? Nope. Like, I think Daniel Carlson walked into Mike Zimmer's office. He was cleaning his shotgun. Like, let's have a little talk here. Come on. Let's check things out.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's unfortunate, and again, that 2019 season, the 2018 season, we were just super snake bit with a bunch of problems with the team. And, I think Zimmer's patience is wearing thin. So yeah, it's another misfortune in Minnesota.
I think too, you're onto something with the whole, he never was going to succeed here. I think a kicker eventually can. You think about, like, outside of the whole bad juju thing, Minnesota would be a great place to kick because you're playing half your games indoors. Mm-hmm. That becomes especially important in December when you're playing in the NFC North. And I mean, even look at the division. You have Detroit, who has a dome. Chicago might have a dome eventually, whether it's here or in Chicago or Arlington Heights. Lambeau Field's a bit of a problem, but I mean, I know they've played at Lambeau in December like every year for the past 5 years, but hopefully you get a mid-season or an early season game there. I think it's a good place to kick in theory. And like we said, Matt Daniels is empowering his special teams, and that includes Greg Joseph. Like, what do you think are your expectations for Greg Joseph this year?
I mean, biggest thing with kickers is consistency. So, I expect a lot of the same from him. He had 2 or 3 game winners last year, and potential game winners. He was extremely consistent. Obviously, there was the Arizona game, but he bounced back from that, won a walk-off against Detroit. And he seems like he's hitting a lot of longer shots, which we didn't see too many of last season, at least, in crunch time. So,
yeah,
I guess, it's kind of just been building blocks for him. It seems like he has the team behind him, and if he's put in that situation, he seems like he has the confidence to probably bring the same results.
If the special teams can turn around, and I know Amir Smith-Marset has had trouble with punt returns lately, if they can figure out those couple positions, I think that's going to add a couple of wins. And of course, at the end, the last 4 minutes of the first half and the end of game, if they can do a little bit better there, I think they'll do fine. Last question I have for you for the show today. Let's talk about your expectations for the Vikings this year. How good do you think they'll be? What's some of your hot takes? How do you think the Vikings are going to do in 2022?
I mean, I try to be cautiously optimistic with this team every year. Um, Obviously, we get into some really good stretches, and you start to really buy in. But I mean, as far as what I've seen from the preseason, how the team's being run, I feel pretty confident. I look at our schedule; we have some really nice stretches, especially at the end of the season. We play Detroit, the Giants, and a couple other easy teams that should set us up to contending in the playoffs. I mean, I say I think 10 wins is my optimistic side.
Right.
Um, but what's guaranteed with the Vikings every year is it's going to be entertaining. Like when you have a quarterback like Kirk Cousins, the floor is always there. So it's again, I feel like we're in that 7 to 10 neighborhood, and depending on how things work out head to head in the division, I think the Packers are going to be tough. By all means, I think everyone's expecting a step back on defense or on offense, but the defense is going to be better than ever. And I think that's going to be like the deciding factor of our matchups. And week one is going to be tough. I'm really I'm very excited to see, or just curious to see how Kevin O'Connell manages a game in this situation. Like first home game, division rival, division champion. It can't be higher stakes for O'Connell's first game.
It is funny because everybody has said basically 7 to 10 wins. I think that's Matthew Collard's bit on Purple Insider where he calls it the hot take challenge. Like, give me a hot take about your Vikings and be like, they could be really good and then win 10 games. Like, I mean, I don't see this team cratering. Like that's kind of my thing. I would be shocked if they wind up showing up next season and winning like 3 games. Like I would just be like, what the hell happened? Like, did Kirk die? Did Kevin O'Connell like lie on his resume? Like, what the hell happened? But I could see the Vikings either being really good. I could see them getting into 11 or 12 wins, depending on how everything gels together. I could see them, finishing with 9 or 10 wins. And the thing is, if they do finish 9-8 or 10-7, I think this feels a lot better than if, last year they finished with 8 wins and everybody's kind of like just exhausted, like, I need change. I need something. I think by the end of the year, we're going to look at this team and go, okay, we have kind of a foundation here. Maybe we just need another quarterback. Maybe we need a center or another offensive lineman to put us over the top. Maybe we need to go get a defensive player that can help. I think we're going to get a lot of answers this season. And I think that's going to be a step towards progress. And I think, I've been saying this all throughout the offseason whenever Kwesi and Kevin O'Connell kind of make the bland move. But I feel like 2023 is the year where they're really going to put their stamp on this team. And if they could build that foundation with a 9 or 10 win season, I think a lot of Viking fans are going to be optimistic heading into next year.
Yeah. I think these next 2 years with Kirk's extension is just essentially running it back, same roster, new coach, seeing what O'Connell can get out of this group. And maybe they play impassioned with this new regime and new culture after Zimmer kind of graded everyone thin. And I was also very excited to see what kind of moves they would make, what kind of stamps they would put on it. And I think that is kind of being deferred until 2023, 2024. But again, I think fans do deserve a little bit of another look at this group before any real drastic moves are made for this franchise.
Well, Trevor, thank you for coming on, filling in for Adam once again. We greatly appreciate you having on. And, if we ever need help, we can give you a call.
Yeah, call me up. No problem, man.
Hey, well, that's all the time we have for the Viking Age podcast today. We do this every Monday and Thursday nights at 6:15 p.m. Central Time, right here on the Viking Age YouTube channel. And if you miss it, we got you covered in podcast form the next day on Apple and Spotify. But however you listen, make sure you're liking, subscribing, giving us a good review, because we never want you to miss a new episode. For Trevor Squire, I am Chris Schad. We'll see you on Monday on the Viking Age podcast.